All right, so you probably think power sits in big government buildings, or that it belongs to the people we vote for. But what if I told you that the real levers controlling your financial life were quietly moved into the shadows centuries ago? Today, we're going to peel back the layers on the hidden history of our financial system. We're going to follow a blueprint that was perfected in Renaissance Venice, but still decides who wins and who loses in your bank account today. So let's get into it and uncover the story of the Venetian ghost. Let's just start with a question that hits really close to home for a lot of us. Take a hard look at your mortgage, your student loans, your credit card bills. Is all that debt a temporary tool that's helping you get ahead? Or does it feel a little more like a permanent part of your life? Is it possible that it was actually designed that way?
Yeah, that's a pretty startling thought, and it's really the core argument we're exploring. The idea that modern debt isn't just a loan anymore, it's a product that's been engineered for dependency, one that turns what should be temporary help into a permanent obligation. So the real question is, how on earth did we get here?
To really get how unusual our system is today, we've got to look back in time. See, for most of human history, the whole idea of permanent, inescapable debt, well, it was seen as a society killer. Societies actually had a built-in release valve, a reset button. But somewhere along the way, we dismantled it. For literally thousands of years, from ancient Mesopotamia all the way forward, civilizations had this thing called debt jubilee. When debts in society just got too big and threatened to tear everything apart, rulers would just wipe the slate clean. It wasn't about being nice, it was a practical tool to keep society stable. Our modern system, though, it's flipped that on its head. It's turned debt into a tool of discipline, a permanent structure that locks in your future labor to pay for a past you can never, ever escape. So if we broke with literally thousands of years of history, where did the blueprint for this new system even come from? Well, the answer lies in the canals and the backroom counting houses of 14th century Venice, with a whole new kind of power we're calling the Venetian ghost. Back in the 14th century, power was easy to see, right? You saw the castle, you saw the crown, you saw the army. But in Venice, the merchants figured something profound out. Being visible is actually a liability. While all the kings were draining their treasuries to pay for wars, these merchants were quietly building a totally new kind of empire, one based on invisible power, the power of contracts, of credit, and of controlling the financial plumbing itself. Now here's what's so fascinating about this. These merchants had a huge problem. The church had banned usury, that's charging interest on loans. Their entire business model was technically a sin. So instead of fighting the law, they just went around it. They created these super complex financial instruments that looked like trade contracts on the outside, but underneath, they worked exactly like loans. They were operating in a legal gray zone that the authorities couldn't even begin to understand, let alone regulate. And this quote, this just nails the result. This wasn't just some clever little workaround, it was a full-blown revolution. For the very first time, a private class of financiers could create wealth and influence totally separate from the state. They realized, hey, if you control the infrastructure that everyone needs to survive, you don't need a crown. In fact, it's a lot easier to just buy the person who's wearing it. Okay, so let's track how this thing grew up. This Venetian ghost didn't just stay in one little city-state. Oh no, it was about to be scaled up big time to build the largest empire the world had ever seen. It basically became the empire's credit card.
So here's how it evolved. Fast forward to 1694, and the Bank of England is founded. Now, on paper, it was just a way for some rich investors to lend money to the king for a war. But what was really happening was the Venetian ghost was being institutionalized. It turned the shaky promises of a monarch into stable, tradable investments. And for the first time, a state could borrow on a massive, massive scale, which is what fueled the whole expansion of the British Empire.
And this created an incredibly powerful feedback loop. It's simple, really. Step 1, Britain borrowed money to fund its massive navy and army. Step 2, winning wars opened up new trade routes and colonies. And step 3, the profits from all that trade were used to pay back the debt, which just made investors more confident, which allowed the state to borrow even more money. It was this self-powering cycle of credit, commerce, and conquest, all running on this new financial architecture. So, where's the Venetian ghost today? Well, it didn't just vanish when the empire faded away. It just changed its clothes. And now it operates in a system that directly impacts how and where you live right now. Today, we call it the shadow banking system.
We're talking about massive hedge funds and private equity firms that operate in that very same gray zone the Venetians pioneered. See, they aren't technically banks, so they get to dodge a lot of the traditional banking rules. And that lets them move way faster and take on way more risk than anybody else.
And just like those merchants from centuries ago, they are buying up the physical stuff of our daily lives. This number right here, it's absolutely staggering. By the 2020s, these institutional investors had bought up more than 200,000 single-family homes, and in the process, they became the new corporate landlords for entire neighborhoods. This makes it personal, right? Because when your landlord is one of these giant firms, you're not dealing with a person you can actually talk to. You're dealing with an algorithm. Your rent increase is decided by a computer in some far-off city, and its only job is to maximize returns for its investors. It's a totally different ballgame. And that, of course, leads to the crucial question. When you try to find out who actually owns your home, the trail just disappears into a maze of shell corporations and tax havens. As the source material puts it so well, it's not corruption, it's architecture, a financial structure that's been designed for extraction with almost zero accountability. Now, look, understanding this history isn't about getting depressed about it. It's about defense. Knowing the architecture of the system is the very first step to building your own financial shield to protect yourself from it. So what can we really learn from all this? Well, it comes down to 3 core lessons. First, you have to understand that money is not the same as wealth. Real wealth is tangible stuff. It's your skills, your knowledge, assets that last. Second, always remember that debt is never neutral. The system is built from the ground up to favor the lender. And that brings us to the third and honestly the most important point. Financial education isn't optional anymore. In this world, it's the only real shield you've got. And we'll end on this really powerful thought. History shows us, over and over, that great powers don't just collapse because they get invaded. They rot from the inside out when their financial systems get totally detached from reality. They collapse when the balance sheet just doesn't balance anymore, and when the people stop believing in the promises that hold the whole thing together. And the question for us is, what does our own balance sheet look like today?